Good afternoon. Welcome to our Thursday session of Cat Space. I'm Kat. This is Buckets, and with us always our best friend and lifelong hero, Leon. Hello, how are you?
Lifelong? Wow, I must have done something. I must have got like an OBE for longevity.
How are you?
How are you?
We're not too bad, not too bad.
Great.
So today's episode is all about the legendary, the iconic Mr. Television, Mr. Australia, the late, great Bert Newton, who we sadly lost on 30th of October at the ripe old age of 83. So today's tribute is all about Mr. Television himself. And this will be fun, but also somber. And I hope our subscribers and viewers enjoyed today's episode. So let's get started. Okay, so Bert Newton is an Australian icon, a legend, a father, husband, and grandfather. We all grew up watching Bert on our TV screens for so many years. He brought laughter, smiles, happiness, and joy to all of us. Thank you, Mr. Newton, for all the love, laughter, and entertainment you gave us. We will miss you greatly. Gone, but will never, ever be forgotten, and we'll never forget you. First question. What was your most memorable moment of Bert Newton?
Who wants to start?
Yeah, who we starting with?
Well, you were telling me the other day about Bert Newton being Moonface from the Luna Park thing.
Yes.
Um,
that was actually him. He's the face of Luna Park.
so I didn't actually know that. I just imagined it was a big face that they just created, but I didn't actually know that was based off his face.
Yeah, it's actually based around him.
Yeah, which means that everyone basically passes through his mouth every time.
So every time we walk in, we're walking into Bert Newton.
Yeah, but yes, we're walking.
The legendary, the iconic Moonface.
But it's amazingly enough, he was dubbed Moonface. He was dubbed Moonface from the Don Lane show back in roughly 1975. But before that, he wasn't dubbed as Moonface. He was also known as Barrel Boy as well. Anyway, and he also started up his career back in his television career back in 1957. It was only like on the Late Show. I think it might have been the Late Show.
Well, he was actually on a few shows. Actually, I believe he created his career started at 18 years old. So that was basic. As soon as he got out of high school, he had a job on TV at 18. Amazing. Way before my time.
Yes, with the legendary Graham Kennedy and Don Lane.
I think Don Lane came a bit later. That was during the 80s.
Don Lane.
But that was a great show. I remember being a kid watching the Don Lane show. And he pretty much was the best. It was weird because he was the best sidekick, but you never really saw him as a sidekick if you think about it. But he won a lot of Logies, just for being himself, kind of thing. It was quite amazing. He'll really be missed.
He really will, and I believe that's where he met his beautiful wife.
And that's what it needs to be all along.
I believe that's where he met his beautiful wife.
That's one thing that Australian television. That's the one thing that Australian television has missed. Characters being themselves. Bert was himself, but he actually, amazingly enough, he started. But when you mentioned Graham Kennedy, it was 1960/61, where he was appearing on TV with Graham Kennedy. That was on Graham Kennedy's Channel 9 show back in 1960, but it only lasted for a couple of years. But he then eventually moved on to the Don Lane show back in 1975. So it's amazing. There was a 14-15 year difference between him and between Bert and Graham Kennedy, and then Bert and Don Lane.
Yeah. But it's also where he met his beautiful wife, Patti.
And actually, a lot of people said that Patti and Bert Newton really was the perfect dream.
The epitome couple, the it couple.
Yeah,
Power
because the thing is about this too, like a lot of marriages, they break up in Hollywood all the time. It's almost like it's a frequent thing that happens. But Patti stayed with Bert Newton for basically until death, basically. And it's almost amazing is that we see there all these other Hollywood couples that break up after the first year or 2 years or 3 years. There really aren't that many couples that both came from Hollywood that actually stay with each other, but they were one of the rare ones that did
in Australia.
in Australia and the world as well.
Their longevity and their love story and fairy tales surpassed the ages, and I think their love encompassed Australia, and Australia felt like Bert and Patti were family to everybody, including all of us. He was with us every day in our homes, on our screens, and so was Patti, and it felt like they were extended family members that we'd never met.
Yeah, it was interesting like that because I remember when Jamoan basically was doing a tourist type show, and one of the things that he was doing was he went to the soccer in Europe, and there was a European commentator that basically said, "Okay, who are the who's on Australia, who's on the Socceroos that everyone should be looking out for?" And he said, Bert Newton, as if that was like our top soccer player of the year, And they're like, there you had it, Bert Newton.
But what I think is
Bert Newton is Australian Matilda.
What I think is most memorable about Albert is that even though he was called Mr. Australia or Mr. Television, to me, he was Mr. Logies because he appeared on the Logies, 19 times?
Yeah, he did.
And I think the Logies was his sort of like, oh, this is my house. This is like my place. Like, yeah, I'm presenting you with a Logie.
But he got, for every Logie that he gave out, he got a Logie of his own.
Yeah.
So he was one of the few Australian personalities that for every Logie he gave, he goes, oh, I got one on my own to bring home. As if it's a takeaway.
But do you know what? He actually, correct me if I'm wrong, fact check this, he began in radio before television.
Yes, that's true.
Correct.
Yeah. So he was a radio personality before appearing on television, and after he did radio, he started his he had to start on television, and it was just, he was so funny and classic. And in modern day Australia, you don't, even though we did have Hey Hey Saturday and whatnot, you don't see that kind of funny. You don't kind of see that charisma and that, light and that grace and that, sort of etherealness of Bert Newton.
Well, it's interesting that the type of shows that Bert Newton would present today are practically non-existent today, unfortunately. Like, for example, the Don Lane show, for example. Some of the jokes that were said in the Don Lane show, you simply couldn't show today because today's too woke for them. There's certain things that were perfectly socially acceptable back in the day, which are just not socially acceptable now. And it's unfortunate because Bert Newton had a great sense of humor, in my personal opinion.
What I think they should
one thing about Bert Newton, especially on the Don Lane show, is one of the most notable for sending up other celebrities, like parodying them and stuff like that. And at one stage, one of the celebrities actually came out. I was like watching him. It was just, you kidding me?
Yeah, actually, yes, at the Pavarotti one. So he dressed up as Pavarotti.
Yeah, and then he came out.
And then Pavarotti came out for real, and he was like, "Oh, hang on, how do I explain this?"
I think I think what they should do now, and if Patti would allow it and permit it, is have the Bert Newton Scholarship for young Australians who are getting their start in radio and then getting their start in television and theatre, sports and comedic, being comedians and comedic
So
moments.
to be a theatrical.
Yeah,
scholarship.
award theatrical scholarship for people who, say, for example, there are those who went to NIDA or NIDA,
Yeah.
something like that. The Bert Newton Scholarship, where it gives young Australians a scholarship all paid for, and the start and the push and the excitement of learning and advancing.
Wouldn't it be good if we actually paid for a scholarship for a very special talented Australian to basically pay for their entire NIDA college education, and then that could be our next top celebrity that represents Australia.
But I believe Bert Newton he's not just a celebrity, he's somewhat of a parent that we all grew up with, whether we had our own parents, and even though we had our own parents or those who lost parents, he represented the Australian family, and
I think
he was family to all of us, even though we didn't know him well.
I actually saw him as basically family entertainment at its best. So the type of entertainment that he was basically selling was very, very popular in the 80s, that it was basically for everyone. And it was sort of that hey, it's Saturday type entertainment where there's something for everyone. Unfortunately, because there's more sex on television today and there's more X-rated stuff that's through the media, that sort of entertainment doesn't really exist anymore. And I wish it did, but it doesn't, because it's like all of our media is like dominated by sex and violence and drama. So there aren't so many classic Australian shows like the Don Lane Show anymore. Even Hey is struggling today, even though I hear there's going to be a comeback.
To be honest, what I loved about Bert is you turn on your television and there he was on Good Morning Australia. But thing is, it never felt scripted. It never felt everything he had to do and say was scripted on a cue card or written for him to read. It felt like Bert knew the instant you turned on your television and you saw him being silly and you went, oh, that's Bert. Nothing was scripted. Everything was on point, original, classy, elegant, funny,
and genuine as
and
well.
genuine. It wasn't like you're watching a comedy TV show where you're waiting for the audience clap and awkward moment.
I actually find that a lot of, I don't know if anyone's actually been to a television show recently, like in a live studio audience, a lot of the time they'll actually train you before the show starts to laugh and clap.
Yeah.
And I went to a show called Game of Gains, and we had to do that. And I was with my friends, and we were just like, you know what, we've been yelling and screaming and clapping and applauding, and my mouth hurts just from doing all this pre-op stuff, and they haven't shown us anything. But with Bert Newton, that didn't actually have to happen
because he was funny.
Yeah, but he was also there was nothing really, like you said, it wasn't scripted. And I find that in a lot of American television shows, particularly Mad TV, is they'll play a joke, right? And the joke's really, really funny, but then they will repeat the same joke over and over and over and over and over, and then it just becomes boring.
It's like
basically a Seth MacFarlane eat your heart out.
Yeah,
also, when it comes to Bert Newton, like you talk about memories there. Good Morning Australia was not 1992. I think it was Channel 10 that really was the first one to branch out from the 9 o'clock slot. I think he had that variety show before anybody else did, I think.
Yeah.
Because if I remember right, I think Channel 9 would have like High Five or something, or I think it might have been High Five. I can't remember what year High Five came in. But anyway, one of those, young kid shows, for the toddlers and stuff like that, for the kids under 5 and stuff. Channel 10 had that adult contemporary stuff hosted by Bert Newton, which was a variety show, which included like music, interviews, cooking segments and stuff like that. And then as it would come on to see, Channel 9 would copy that, but with an earlier time slot called the Today Show, and then Channel 7 would move into it as well with Sunrise. But Bert Newton's Good Morning Australia did all that first when it came to the 90s
Absolutely.
daytime
Absolutely.
television.
But as I was saying, like with him, it was just honest and raw and real and genuine and heartfelt. Like it honestly felt like waking up to Good Morning Australia. It's like, oh yes, Bert's going to be on TV today. Wonder what's going to happen today. You won't wait. It's not like
he was actually quite. It was interesting because he was actually quite a warm host.
A warm soul.
Well, not just a warm soul, but he was a warm host, and that's really, really good thing to have, because as you can imagine, people are quite nervous when they get on television because it's a big deal, and they have stage fright and all sorts of things. But his presence kind of took that away from people. He took all that fear away, that it was just nice, as if he's basically, you're coming over to his house and having a cup of tea.
Yeah.
So that was one of his best qualities.
Just before we go on to the next question, I find his heart and soul and the man that he was, he had a lot of empathy and kindness. And that showed on TV, and it showed his true authenticity. When, for example, you're watching SNL, for example, you're waiting for that drop of funny where you're wanting to laugh or clap, but it's got like, oh dear, that's not funny.
Yeah,
but then
I find that, and it's look, Saturday Night Live today compared to say Saturday Night Live 20 years ago. I know this is off topic. It's not the same show. It's not nearly as funny, and to be honest, it's almost restricted.
Yeah.
But
with Bert, you didn't have that, oh, say this or say that. Or
you can't say this on television.
Bert was like the dad or the granddad we all loved in the morning. And if you didn't have your Bert fix of Good Morning Australia, waiting for that, back to you, Moira. It's kind of like that moment, just now thinking about it, put a smile to my face, because it's kind of like you're waiting for that moment. And it's sort of, as soon as he came back on TV, it's sort of like, I'm really going to miss him, because it's sort of, I'm going to miss his presence, I think.
Next question.
Next question is, what shows did you grow up watching Bert Newton on? I think we covered that, and Good Morning Australia was one of them, but is there any other TV shows you loved watching?
I think he did basically he was on, well, my favorite show was the Don Lane Show, and I already mentioned that.
Yeah.
But he was that, to me, that was potentially, apart from Hey Hey It's Saturday, that was one of the greatest shows ever, because he was so free. But we've already discussed that.
What about you, Leon? About the same feeling?
Yeah, something like that. I was talking about like the Don Lane Show, as we know. Good Morning Australia would have been the as far as me being alive at that point. Here's one for you. I don't know if you guys would have known it, but from 1976 to 1985, he did host a show called New Faces. Now, New Faces.
Oh, I heard about this.
Actually really launched the careers of the likes of Daryl Summers, John Williamson as well. There you go. Shane Bourne, comedian. Cole Elliott, comedian. Paul Hogan, Hogs. There you go. Is another one. Also, Keith Urban was a contestant on New Faces back in 1983.
So not
Go figure that one out.
It's New Faces.
Yeah.
So is that how Red Faces started?
Yeah, kind of. It was like, it kind of turned out to be a parody of that. But anyway, but that also launched, like I said, launched the careers. It helped launch the careers of the likes of Daryl Summers. So Bert Newton's, well, not quite Bert Newton at the time, because New Faces, it was hosted by Frank Wilson at the time when Daryl Summers won. New Faces, which Bert Newton was associated with, inadvertently, well, not inadvertently, but helped launch the careers of the likes of Daryl Summers. Like I said, Daryl Summers, John Williamson, Shane Bourne, Cole Elliott, Paul Hogan, and also put, in a sense, it put Keith Urban on the map, and also Peter Andre as well.
Wow, Peter Andre. There you go. Next question. How did his era change Australian TV?
I don't know if how it could actually change Australian TV. I can only see what Australian TV was like it is today. I suppose what Bert Newton has effectively done has brought more acts to Australia. And because there were lots of very, very famous jazz musicians that, of course, came on the Don Lane show and whatnot. And he was a very, internationally known star. But I can't really say how it changed television. Maybe it was it exposed the real larrikin side of Australian culture on the scene, perhaps. That's all I can really see. But his era is different to what we have today. It's a completely different era. Today we're not even meant to swear on TV. We're very restricted. We have to be very mindful of what we say to other people because people are very sensitive today.
Very woke.
Very woke. So it's hard for me to actually say what did he actually bring. I think it was just a different culture of television, I think.
I think I can answer that for you. What did his era of television bring? We didn't have social media back then. We didn't have phones back then. So what he brought in his era.
We had in the wall phones.
Okay, no, but what I'm talking about, we didn't sit on our mobile phones and go on Facebook or Instagram. We had computers, but we didn't spend time on those. We were sitting down as a family, and his era brought laughter and joy. He brought positivity and kindness to people. And I think a lot of empathy, and, he brought that sort of family orientated vibe of it's time for Bert Newton, and you sit down and you show respect and you laugh and you smile, and it's that moment of we're with him and he's with us, and that's what his era brought, was family.
Well, I think he was I'm not going to say he's a clean comedian because, he was cleanish kind of thing, but he wasn't like over the top. And that's why, the whole family could watch him every single week and not have a problem with him, because it was funny where it was a little bit scandalous, but it wasn't over the top like today. A lot of today's stuff is over the top.
What do you
it's very,
think?
very shocking today.
I think what he brought was stand up in the parody kind of thing, because, like I said, he came up as a sidekick on the Don Lane show, and also came up with I think it's called satire now, I believe.
Yes,
satire. Right. That's when he's standing up that's when he's been playing stand-up comic to other celebrities, like dressing up as other celebrities and stuff like that. You did mention there was some controversy regarding him back in roughly 1970s during one of the Logie Awards, where he actually called Muhammad Ali. I even said to Muhammad Ali, I like the boy. Now, people don't know back then, I like the boy could have been, twisted as a racial comment. And it was like, you mean Roy? And then Bert Newton's go, yes, Roy. And he said like, I'll change my name, I'll change my religion, I'll change everything, as to lighten the mood because of what he potentially said at the time. So there was some controversy back then, but he brought that stand-up comic and satire before it was just flat out just rude satire, just dumping just with a slate. He didn't do that kind. He was just doing a wholesome satire, not dirty comics as we see these days.
Next question. Alrighty, why won't there be another person like Bert Newton? And I'll start with that. I think there won't be another person like him. They can try, and they will try, but there'll never be another person like him, because he was just the most incredible, amazing human being, and a gracious entertainer and host, a father, a grandfather. He was legendary and iconic, and I think there won't be another one like him, because it's just hard to replicate someone like Bert with his integrity and empathy and kindness and love and positive light. I'm sorry. I think they can try, but it'll never ever happen.
I don't think you can really replace Bert Newton because he was always himself, and anyone that basically tries is just a faker. The truth is, Australian comedy has changed dramatically. You know, we're more vocal, or a lot of the time we're actually more political. So we joke about politics all the time, and that's very distinctively Australian, to make fun of our leaders all the time. We also, our comedy is very rude as well, and very
Brash.
I wouldn't call brash, but it's quite our comedy isn't as sexist as it once was, and so for that reason, you can't. I mean, unless the thing is, there really isn't that much wholesome family comedy out there anymore. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like the Gruen Transfer is a perfect example. I mean, that is a show literally about making ads, and it's a really funny show about making ads and the information about making ads and all of that. But I wouldn't really call that a show designed for children. It's really an adult type show, because really it's adults that would only get that sort of humor. And then you've got, I guess, you know, other shows back again, like again, there are sort of like, there aren't really many, unfortunately, there aren't that many Australian comedies out there that were basically in his area. I'll give you an example now. Like, Are You Being Served? I know that's an English show, but that's around about the same era as Bert Newton, that you could get away with saying certain things and it was funny. People in Australia don't really write comedies like that anymore. It's more truth-based. A lot of it is truth-based. It's not really it's not really based on dressing up as another character and then acting out, because that might be considered offensive today. So for that reason, you'll never have another comedian like Bert Newton, because of what people were into and what people do or don't find offensive, especially with a lot of politically motivated groups that are out and about today. That's why I don't think you'll ever get another Bert Newton.
The other thing I want to say before I pass it on to you, which is that back then we didn't have to watch what we say or said or did to offend or anger or upset anybody. Now it's different because of Bert. We didn't have to do that. Now it's because everybody's so woke, and anything you say can and will be held against you.
Yes, and it will be held against
keyboard
you.
warriors and targeted and issues and drama and problems and, you know, this, that. But with Bert, it was just like none of that existed.
No, and if you were really offended about someone on television, I mean, you know, you did, there were, you know, places or letters that you could write to the Australian Box Office Commission, but unless you actually were bothered to write a letter, which most people weren't, no one really cared, kind of thing. Whereas today, everyone's got Facebook, everyone's got social media, everyone will complain every 30 seconds
about something,
about the smallest of things. And as a consequence, people have to really watch what they say or they'll lose their jobs. So that's, for that reason, you'll never get another Bert Newton for that reason.
What do you think?
I agree. There's no the problem these days with comedy is you can't really do much comedy these days because there's standards of practices. That's what I hate about it, because like you said, the keyboard warriors, mate, they drive me absolutely insane. I am one of those people that I really get fired up against this kind of stuff, like against the keyboard warriors, mate. If you don't want to watch what's going on, change the channel. Because I'm the kind of person that's not going to bend to these people. I will tell them. I pretty much punk them out straight away. If you don't like what, don't like it, push fast forward. To use your TiVo or something, just fast forward. We still sell TiVo in Australia. I don't
Or
know.
just not watch
But-
the show. It's so simple.
Yeah, exactly. Don't watch the show. You can watch something else for 30 minutes. It's not that hard.
There are shows on Netflix that we enjoy, and then there are shows on Netflix that we don't enjoy.
Yeah.
And the ones that we don't enjoy, we just don't turn on. It's just a simple.
I don't watch them. I'll find something else to watch for that period of time or something. Yeah, you're right.
There was a question I wanted to ask, but I think we've already answered that. So I'm just going to skip to the next one, which is, why is the loss of Bert Newton a major loss to Australian television?
I think it's the amount of work he put into television itself. So, Leon, I know you can answer this question for me. So let's have a calculation of how many years Bert Newton literally spent in the entertainment industry to date.
Wow. So he began his television career back in 1957. He really kind of, faded out from that around 2012. So from 57. So it's about roughly 50, 60 years, somewhere in between there.
So he spent 60 years entertaining Australia.
Something along those lines.
Okay, so the only other people or person or individuals that I know of that have basically had that sort of career span in the entertainment industry would probably be some of the footy commentators like Patti or Sterlo, who's just retired, or some of the cricket commentators as well that have a fairly long
career span.
Long career span.
Mm.
But Bert Newton's really the only long-term talk show hosts that have really gone the distance. And I challenge anyone to go, well, how many people of his era have lasted that long? Even Don Lane retired way before Bert Newton retired, way before. When his show ended, it was probably like the worst thing ever because that was the funniest thing on television. But still, Bert Newton outlived Don Lane. So I think that's why it's such a big deal, because of the amount of years he's spent on Australian television.
Let's not forget the advice. I mean, I've read so many things on Facebook and Instagram where celebrities have said, thank you for giving me my start on your show on Good Morning Australia. Thank you for the loving advice you gave me. You told me to be myself. You told me to, just spread my wings and fly. You told me that I could do it. You told me to believe in myself. You told me to have faith. You told me to try and try again. And if you fall, get back up and keep going. He didn't give tough criticism. He gave loving, caring advice to celebrities and to people he met. And he was always open to photographs and selfies and autographs and on the phone and on social media. He always gave 100,000% of himself. And, his loss will impact Australia because we won't have another Bert Newton. We won't have another Funny. We won't have that kind of generosity. And he made it his mission that we wake up with him every day. We laugh with him every day, and how fun he was, and his charisma and his, it wasn't, I'm not here to offend or anger anybody or insult anybody, but he wasn't all about me. It was, I'm here to entertain you. I hope I can make you smile. I hope I can make you laugh. I hope you learn something from me as I learn from you. And I think that's a really, really hard thing for the loss of the Australian media and television, is that there will never be another authentic person like him.
I wonder, I just remember about the time, one of the things that he had to actually go through, which is his own battle, not only with his health concerns, but one of the biggest battles that he had was also when he briefly went bankrupt, because there was a period of time where he was off air for a while, and then he basically had to claw his way back up again.
Yeah.
Normally when Australian stars leave entertainment, they stay off the radar for the rest of their lives, but he didn't. He had a bit of a break, and then he basically clawed his way up and became famous again.
I mean, that
And
last,
reinvented himself with Good Morning Australia around that time.
yeah, but also that moment of that last episode, that moment with him on Good Morning Australia, where he finally said goodbye and went off air on Channel 10. I remember that day I was lying in bed, waking up to him, and I was like, that can't be. No, he can't go off TV. No, that can't be. I'm sorry. Like, what are we gonna watch after that? Where's he gonna be at? We need to stay with Bert. Bert is us and we are him. His family, you know, him, Patti, you know, his whole family is our family. And whether we knew him personally or not, it's kind of like that moment of sadness. I'm like,
And then he returned to Channel 9 like 1 year later after Good Morning Australia was chopped back in 2005.
Yeah. Lastly, last question. Is the passing of Bert Newton the end of an era?
Yes, definitely. Unless they can bring back Hey Hey It's Saturday, which they're planning to. I think so, yes. I think, unfortunately, gone are the days of Australian family fun variety shows. I wish there were more shows like them, but there aren't, unfortunately. And I think that's a real shame, because a lot of the time Australian, like I said before, a lot of the time Australian comedy concentrates on politics and advertisements and more, you know, morality and stuff like that, and what's good and what's bad. Whereas the family fun variety show doesn't really seem to have a place in Australian television anymore, and that's a real shame. It's a real shame. There will always be family television shows around. You know, they'll come and they'll go, but I don't think there'll be anything like what he brought, to be perfectly honest.
The only thing I want to say about this before we close it is that the reason why it's an end of an era, and there's one word to describe Bert Newton: wholesome. Wholesome and family, those two words, sorry. Wholesome and family orientated. There'll never be another wholesome show or person like Bert, and there'll never be another funny or charismatic or empathetic and kind and generous, a big heart like his. Big shoes to fill, but I'm sorry, those shoes are ridiculously big, and no matter who tries, it's like you can't outweigh the king.
Yeah, I well, here's the thing. I mean, what Australian presenter today has a big moon face of his actual face on a theme park. I mean, Hugh Jackman doesn't have one.
That shows that we are in that shows how Australia is thankful to continue his legacy and to be able to see him every time you go to Luna Park.
Yeah, exactly. So he's not really
gone,
not really dead in spirit, because everything that Luna Park represents is basically Bert Newton in a way. If you just want to know, if you've never seen Bert Newton, which is strange that nobody has seen him, but just in case there are people that have never seen or experienced Bert Newton, I encourage you to go to Luna Park, because that's exactly what his personality was like. It was just full of fun and glamour and sophistication. And when you saw him, you just walked away happy. There was never a time where you didn't walk away happy.
And the other thing I can say about it is the new generation now of today of our modern world are discovering Bert Newton, are watching old videos of Bert Newton. The new generation are getting to know stories about Bert Newton, his legend and who he was. And I think the more the more the new generation of today learns about him. I think they should really have a class discussion in every school about legendary, iconic human beings such as Bert Newton. Projects on him, and
I think honestly, I wish Australian television today would learn from Bert Newton and key into the Australian heart and the Australian need for say the nuclear family.
wholesome.
And I think that if Australian television today can key into the need for at least a nuclear family or a well-connected family, then they could potentially start making shows like that again. But because unfortunately we've got way too much drama on television, I don't see it happening. But I would want it to happen, to be honest.
Well, we definitely have reached the end of an era because obviously there's not going to be another Bert Newton. There's not going to be anybody like Bert Newton. The only one I could think of, right, you mentioned it, Hey Hey It's Saturday, Daryl Summers. The Hey Hey It's Saturday have been around for a very long time. And obviously I have heard the rumors myself about bringing back Hey Hey It's Saturday for another run. Because we live in this woke era, it can't be Hey Hey It's Saturday the way that we remembered it, because it's just not going to work, because there'd be too many people complaining. Also, another one that's been around for quite some time was a show on Channel 7 called Wombat. Now that was the host of that show was none other than Agro, aka obviously Jamie Dunn from Agro's Kind of Connection, and up to about 1990, that's when it became Agro's Kind of Connection, and it ran for up until 1997. So technically that was around for roughly nearly 20 years. So that was also the last of the at least those kind of shows, those long lasting ones.
I really do hope and pray that when the Logies happens this year and they do an in memoriam and they show his videos and his picture, that he gets a big applause and standing ovation, not just that, a posthumous Logie award where Patti and the family can accept it on his behalf and just sort of remember him as just
I'll go one better. Maybe they should bring out because what ARIA have done, they've renamed Breakthrough Artist to the Michael Gudinski Breakthrough Artist. Maybe they should bring one a Bert Newton Logie for comedy or something along those lines, or something along those lines. Maybe that's what they should do as well.
Yeah.
I know I've been to there's a museum in Canberra that actually has Philup's heart. I can't remember the exact name of it. I think it's the just the National Museum of Canberra, I believe. And that shows a bunch of Australia's most famous Australians that have been on television, right? And has everyone from Benita from Play School and a few other really famous ones. So I wouldn't be surprised if they basically add Bert Newton to that collection, to be perfectly honest, because he was such a big deal.
I really hope Australian schools, whether it's primary schools, high schools, universities, really have an Australian history, and as part of Australian history have Bert Newton and really study him and bring him into this modern day and this new era of people, of children and young adults and teens discovering Bert Newton and discovering who he was as himself. And
wouldn't that be good? I mean, we're going to basically add a new piece of curriculum to the education system. You're going to learn about the biggest laugh of all of Australia.
Not the biggest laugh, the biggest icon of Australia, Mr. Television himself. Yeah. But I think he will go down in history, and he will be remembered as just a kind soul, amazing person.
One of the things I learned in history was basically we had to learn about cricket matches and stuff like that between between England and Australia and that particular era. So I would love it if the Australian government could add another era of that we could raise our kids on about what television was like during this period. And I think if they learnt that, they could learn a big part of Australian culture and what it means to be an Australian on Australian television. And I think that would be, to be honest, a great treasure to hold, as opposed to just forgetting what just happened after the last 60 years of his presence, to be perfectly honest.
And as we close the show, I want to thank you for coming on with us, and I'm sure we'll see you again next week. And we'd like to send, on behalf of us at Catspace, we'd like to send our condolences to Patti, to Lauren, to Matthew and the GrandKids, and our love and our thoughts and our sincere prayers and condolences are with you, with all of you, and know that we all love you as family, and the whole of Australia loves you as family, and you will always be a part of our home and our life, and you'll always be in our hearts. So we will miss you, Bert, and thank you for everything you did for us as a human being, as a kind, wonderful, warm, gentle soul, and as an entertainer. And I think it'll be fitting to say goodbye. If you have something, Leon, maybe.
That, like I said, there's not going to be another Bert, unfortunately. No. I wish there was, but there just ain't.
Do you have something that we could put as a memento to say our goodbyes? And
well, I'm just thankful he wasn't on Country Practice, because that was terrible, that show.
Oh, how can you say that about a Country Practice? Come on.
I think every TV show should hold a tribute to him. So yeah. Once again, thank you to our subscribers and to up and coming subscribers and viewers. We hope you've enjoyed today's tribute to the legendary, iconic Mr. Bert Newton, an entertainer, a father, a grandfather, a legend. And tell us what you think. Please subscribe and push the bell. Leave us some comments. Tell us what topics or ideas you'd like us to cover next, and we'll do that for you. And I'll also give you a shout out. And thank you for tuning in every week. And hopefully we'll put everything on today and send out that audio on Spotify as well. Make sure you follow us there as well in Catspace. So from all of us, we'd like to say thank you for tuning in. Do you have anything, Leon?
I've got a picture I got to bring up. I'll bring up, just after we've done this.
Okay. Well, we'll see you later.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.